Hello and welcome to today's session. My name is Ken Muraguri. I'm a GMAT trainer with the Kenya program. And today we'll be dealing with critical reasoning, where we'll look at resolve or explain questions or paradox. So this is a very common CR question type, which needs you to solve an apparent contradiction or paradox presented in a stimulus. So a paradox is a statement that, despite apparently having a valid reasoning from true premises, leads to a seemingly self-contradictory or logically unacceptable conclusion. So this means that, say, if you expect 1 plus 1 to be 2, you have 1 plus 1 and not 2. So you are supposed now to explain why this is. So for example, if you have a very common concept, so if supply increases, you expect the price to decrease. But you have a situation where supply increases and price also increases. So that's a paradox. So you are supposed now to identify the choice that gives a valid reason why the result is opposite of what we expected. So that's what we're saying here. You're required to offer an explanation that resolves the paradox or gives a valid reason for the contradiction. So the answer choice must marry the two sides of the conflict and be relevant. That means that it should connect the two sides. So it should explain both why we do not have the expected result and why the expected result happened. So to solve these questions, you eliminate answer choices that only explain one side of the paradox. So maybe explain in our example why supply increased, but it doesn't explain why the price did not decrease. And then the answer choices that worsen the conflict. This is the answer choice that seemingly result in the situation being worse. So it doesn't really explain, it achieves the opposite effect, such that you have a further conflict. If, say, you were expecting price to reduce, the answer choice explains why the price should have reduced. And then the answer choices that do not give any insight that helps solve the paradox. So these are just out of scope answers. So when solving these questions, be careful of choices that seek to explain a paradox by comparing it to something seemingly similar happening previously or elsewhere. So in the example that we are using, you may find an answer choice that says, in the previous years, when supply increased, so price also increased. So just because this happened, say, in 2022, doesn't mean or doesn't explain why it also happened in 2023. So just given a fact that doesn't explain this paradox. So be careful of those, because most of the times you'll find a similar answer choice in these questions. So with that being said, we can handle a simple question to help us understand how to handle these questions. So you can go ahead and pause, and then we'll discuss the question.
You're watching Success with Bob Mwiti Show, presented to you by Upstake America. Upstake America is a consulting company that helps immigrants find amazing higher education and job opportunities in the tech industry in the United States. You can find our programs by going to www.appstechamerica.com. Appstec America, we wake you up to the unlimited potential.
So a study compared a sample of Swedish people older than 75 who needed in-home assistance with a similar sample of Israeli people. The people in the two samples received both informal assistance, which is provided by family and friends, and formal assistance, which is professionally provided. Although Sweden and Israel have equally well-funded and comprehensive systems for providing formal assistance, the study found that the people in Swedish sample received more formal assistance on average than those in the Israeli sample. So the first thing you do here is understand the paradox. So you have a comparison of the Swedish people versus Israeli people. So both have formal and informal assistance. So this is common to both. And then we see that both of them have in common an equally well-funded and comprehensive system for providing formal assistance. So the first one is the same. But the study found that people in the Swedish sample received more formal assistance. So for Swedish, they have more formal assistance than the Israeli sample. So why is that the case? So which of the following, if true, does most to explain the difference that the study found? So we can go on to our eliminations. So we want to find an answer choice that may explain why the Swedish have more formal assistance than the Israeli people. So a companion study found that among children needing special in-home care, the amount of formal assistance they received was roughly the same in Sweden as in Israel. So this is one of the answer choices that we were saying it worsens the conflict. Because if in children, remember here we are talking about people older than 75. So even children, the amount of formal assistance they received was roughly the same. So why was there a change here? So why were the Swedish people having more formal assistance as compared to Israel? And then again, even if this answer choice was that the amount of formal assistance they received was, say, more in Sweden as in Israel, just because the children in the country who need care have more formal assistance as compared to Israeli, doesn't mean that it's the same for the older people. So be careful of these aspects. Then B, more Swedish than Israeli people older than 75 live in rural areas where formal assistance services are sparse or non-existent. So we are saying more Swedish people live in rural areas where formal assistance are sparse or non-existent. And yet, the Swedish people receive more formal assistance. So this again, it worsens. Because if this was to be kind of true, that means that the Israeli people would be receiving more formal assistance than the Swedish people. So can eliminate B. And C, although in both Sweden and Israel, much of the funding for formal assistance ultimately comes from the central government, the local structures through which assistance is delivered are different. So this tells us that the delivery of these services is of the funding the local structures through which assistance is delivered. Yeah. So how assistance is delivered is or differs between the two countries. But does that really help us explain why Sweden has more formal assistance offered than Israel? It really doesn't. Says out. D, in recent decades, the increase in life expectancy of someone who is 75 years old has been greater in Israel than in Sweden. So we know that the life expectancy in Israel is bigger, but we do not know that, or we do not know the effect of these either formal or informal assistance to life expectancy. And even if we knew, we do not, or it doesn't really help us explain why there is more formal assistance in Israel than in Sweden. These out. E, in Israel, people older than 75 tend to live with their children, whereas in Sweden, people of that age tend to live alone. So you can see here now that they are focusing on the age group that we want. And then you'll notice that on the first read, this really doesn't seem very important. But if you go back to our stimulus, you have this sentence: the people in the two samples received both informal assistance provided by family and friends. So in E, you can see that the people older than 75 tend to live with their children, which is family. Whereas in Sweden, people of that age tend to live alone. So if there is family around, so this may explain why in Sweden there is more informal assistance than in Sweden, where if someone lives alone, this means that the most probable care is the formal assistance. So this actually explains the paradox, and therefore is our answer. So we have said in summary, make sure that you know what your paradox is. So that is, make sure you know both sides. Then to go through your options and eliminate whichever answer choice that either handles only half of the problem, 2 is out of scope, and 3 worsens the conflict. So doing this, you'll be able to easily solve most of these paradox questions or explain questions. So that was our lesson today. We'll see you in our next lesson. Bye.